Welcome to the fence.
Wait. Are you recording?
Yes. Good one, Gar. Welcome to the fence with your hosts, Mitch
And Gar.
And Sam.
And Sam, our honorary host. We dive into all kinds of topics to help give a leg up to both first-time exercisers or those of you in the fence. The topics we cover could help with
Muscle building.
fat loss,
Sexual wellness.
Strength.
all of the above, guys. Our job as your host is to help get you off the fence and into the body of your dreams.
Oh, yeah.
And with us today is Brian. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks
I
for
appreciate
joining,
it.
man. Thank you for joining.
Absolutely.
This is actually Sam's dad for all of our listeners who've been following along. We somehow were able to rope the old man into getting in here.
Yeah, and there is you have to tell us the secret why you look younger than your son. I can't get over that part.
No idea. He did that to himself. I had nothing to do
We're
with
doing that today. Come on.
Hey, we talked about like improving health, all right?
We're gonna
You're
bust on you
definitely
hard.
doing a bad job.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna
All
bust
right,
on you
good.
hard today, man.
All right. Listen, I'm here for it. I'll just sit here and twiddle my thumbs and look up.
Wow.
Just sit there and look pretty.
Yep.
All right, Sam. So, I'm sorry. All right, Brian.
Yes.
Tell us about yourself. Give us a little breakdown. What's your what are you doing right now? What are you up to?
I am a worship pastor. I am a husband, a father of 5, and I am a musician. I play music and sing for the band Octane. So I am pretty much very spoken for. I have dogs. I'm a pit bull enthusiast.
How many?
We have 2 pits now. We fostered pits for years, my wife and I, before we decided to adopt. And the funniest thing is we actually got out of rescue because after fostering pit bulls for years, it came time we were like, you know what, I think we're going to just settle down and adopt our own. And the rescues that we rescued with would not adopt to us because they said, you have small children, you're a liability. And I was like, wait a minute. You've been sending these dogs you have zero background on for years into my home with my small children, and there's no issue. But as soon as we want to adopt a puppy from a litter in a rescue, you're like, yeah, it's a liability. So we were like, you know, I think I'm going to take a step back from rescue. And listen, I understand, and I do have total respect for rescues. Absolutely. They do a wonderful job, most of them. But for us, that was just kind of one of those things where I was like, you know, I don't want to be caught up in that. I kind of want to be able to get my dog, be responsible for my dog, and that's what we did. And we ended up with we've had multiple since then. We lost one last February, and 2 days later, my wife went and adopted another one. I personally wouldn't have been ready yet, but she was ready. So when you only have one set of paws walking through the halls instead of 2, and you're used to 2, it's almost like it's deafening silence. You're just like, wow.
Right.
So we brought another one in. She's a crackhead.
How old is she?
She's 2-ish. It's probably closer to 3 now. So I think when they brought her home last year, she had just been about 2. And it was funny because I wasn't at home when they decided to go to the SPCA. I was actually in church. And I get the call from my wife 2 days, like I said, after the dog that passed away. She was my girl. Like she was my dog. So I was devastated. And it was sudden. Like we had no idea. Apparently she had a tumor on her heart. And took a few coughs, laid down on the floor, and 2 hours later we had to put her down.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it was absolutely atrocious. So I'm at church and I get this call from my wife, and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm thinking, you know what I'm doing? I'm in church, and she says, "Well, we're on our way to the SPCA. I saw this dog online that was like the good citizen dog. They had the dog on Channel 10. This whole thing." And I was like, great, that's cool. And in my mind, I wasn't even worried about it because there's rules. And I know the rules. The rules is the dog has to meet everyone in your family, everyone. The dog has to meet your resident dog. You can't just go and adopt a dog. So I'm like thinking, whatever. So 3 hours later, I get a call with all of my kids on the other end in the car, laughing and all of these things going on in the car. And I'm like,
Oh, boy.
what's going on? And they're like, well, we're bringing Minnie home. And I'm just like, in shock. And they're all continuing to laugh. I'm like, what? All right. Wait, first of all, why is everyone laughing? They're like, because she farts like crazy. And I'm like, well, this in itself is, and I'm like, okay, so tell me then, how did this happen? This isn't even possible. And she says, my wife says to me, they have this new program. It's called You Can Test Drive A dog.
God.
Like you bring them home into your environment. They get to meet your dog. They get to meet everyone. I was like, I never heard of this. She's like, actually, we're the first family that they've done this with. I'm like, of course we are.
They were messing with
Not
you.
gonna lie.
That was 100% legitimate. That,
really?
that is what it was. It literally was. We
We
have
were
this
the
new
first
program.
family, and my wife was like, I'm all over that. I'm bringing home this dog.
Yeah.
So it's like unsupervised though, unsupervised visitation. Like
Yeah. So what we did was, because we are thankfully dog savvy, is you have to do very slow introduction pit bull to pit bull. So they have this thing, it's called crate and rotate. So essentially what you do is for like the first week, you have 2 crates on the same floor and you introduce them outside your house where you take them both for a walk. Somebody's got one dog, somebody has the other, but you're walking on separate sides of the street. Then when you bring them into the house, so the first week, one's in a crate while one's free in the house and they get to know each other without being face to face because there's just too much excitement. And then gradually you start to introduce and give them like a little closer and a little closer so they build this, that one's okay, they're not trying to invade on my space, and it just creates this camaraderie. And it's a beautiful thing when it works, and it's really nice because, the two of them are good together. The only thing is my older one, my boy, he's about 7 years old, and you can just tell sometimes he's just had it with her crap. He's just like, you know what, I really don't have the energy for you right now. And she she pushes his buttons, but it's okay.
does he lay down the law like let her know she's alpha? Or?
No, because he is not that guy, and he's never been that guy. And I think the reason he's never been that guy is my older one who passed away last year. When he came to our house, she was 2.5. And she really schooled him because he was 12 weeks when we brought him, and she brought him up properly, like knowing this is okay, this isn't okay. So he never overstepped his bounds. So when I brought in a dog, which I would say, the new one that we have, newish to us, she's more dominant. He's not really sure how to deal with that behavior. So a lot of times he will just walk away. Like, this isn't worth it. I don't want to argue about this. And I'm just like, man, come on, you got to be like that guy. And
Yeah.
Almost
But
like
at the same time, at least it's not confrontation.
Almost
right?
like
Yes.
a real family situation right now.
Yes, exactly.
Crazy Latina wife and chill dude is like, hell with it. Walks away.
right.
Choose your battles carefully.
Yes.
Okay. You gonna get a third?
No.
No.
Absolutely not. And I told my
God
wife.
loves 3 though. Come on,
Listen.
man.
Not even a little bit.
I already told my wife, I said, after one of these dogs is called home, let's take a little breather. My wife has that thing. She's Italian. And calm doesn't exist in her world. If things get calm for a moment, she's got to do something to shake it up. And I'm just like, listen, I can deal with chill. I'm okay with chill. And she's not so much.
I know the type. I know
Yeah,
the type.
not so much okay with chill. And listen, it's very, we complement each other in that way because there's definitely been things I've done in my life with her that I probably would not have done had she not been my wife. And I mean like normal things to things like, we were in LA together, and I'll never forget, she woke me up, and this is late 90s, and she woke me up and she was just like, come on, we're going to go to Palm Springs today. And, we were staying on Sunset Strip, and I was like, okay. And I come down to the lobby, and there's a convertible Mustang and an old school map because you don't have navigation at that point. And my wife doesn't read maps. So essentially, she's got her feet up, the top down, and we're driving from LA to Palm Springs, and she's got her feet on the dash and just holding this map up and here, you can read this while you're driving. I'm like,
So spontaneous.
yes. Things like I would not have been that guy that day. But you know what? It was a great time, and it's one of my most fondest memories. I did have to reel in the reins that night, though. From Palm Springs, she wanted to go to Vegas, and it was a 6-hour drive through Death Valley in a Mustang. And I did say, we're not going to do that because there's no gas stations going through Death Valley. So I think we're going to head back to LA.
It's good to know your limits, man.
Yes.
Listen, Gar's from Russia. He'll mess anybody up.
It's not Russia.
I know. I just say he's Russian to bug him all the time.
I mean, everyone called me Russian in the army. Now everything changed since the war because everyone is like, nope. Me personally, I didn't care. All right, I'm Russian. And then started making a Russian accent and stuff like that, just for shits and giggles.
What are you? I always forget because I always call you Russian just to pick on you.
You're Russian, right? Half. Or something like that.
There's some Russian, right?
We're going to find out, actually, believe it or not, what we are. We don't actually know because there's nobody really left to ask. And my wife got everybody for Christmas these Ancestry DNA.
Mm-hmm.
I've done
Yes.
that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we're all doing it. So I'm
So it's
actually going
about
to
to
find
be.
out finally what we are. But I know Bortnick came from Bortnick, which is somewhere over in Russia. I'm just not sure exactly what sect.
I was told my whole life growing up that I was part like Native American, and like my great grandmother was blanket Indian mixed with like Cherokee. And when I finally did that test, it turns out like instead of Native American, I was actually like 2% Jewish, and I knew I was Dutch. That was in there, but also like all these crazy things that I never knew. And then you can actually connect with people on there. Have you downloaded the app yet?
I have not.
They'll start like matching you with like third cousins and stuff.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
I'm excited to do it, except for, actually, I was very excited until last night. My son, my littlest guy, and my wife, I was watching them do their test and spitting in this test tube. And then I kind of was like, I went from being pretty excited about this to like, I'll get to it when I get to it.
Well, and then somebody has your DNA. That's something somebody brought to my attention. I was like, oh, well, you're right.
That is true.
True. My sister did it though. That's why I didn't do it.
Speaking of DNA, that reminded me of the question. How did you meet your wife? Because I got to say, my profession, personal trainer, and you're in a successful band, those are technically like red flag careers, if I'm not mistaken, right? So like, how did that process look like? Did you meet her because of the band or in church?
So, no, I did not meet my wife in church. I actually met my wife. She was working. It was a club that I was making music at, and she was bartending at the time. My wife was working during the day and bartending at night, saving for my oldest daughter, who is on paper my stepdaughter, but she'll never hear those words because she is my first child. So my wife was taking care of her and doing things, and so I was at a band practice this one night in the club that my wife worked at. The manager of this band was also the manager of this club. So he came to band practice and said, you guys have got to see this girl. There's this new girl we have working at the club. And I said, all right, yeah, I mean, I'm after band practice, I'm in. So we go and I see her, of course, and like, I'm just like, okay, this girl is absolutely stunning. And I went up and ordered a drink from her and was trying to use like my best cool guy band move. And I said, listen, hey, my band's playing here this Saturday. Would you like to come and see us? And she's like, I don't like bands. Can I get you anything else?
Ooh. Brutal.
So I was like, just check. We'll be fine. And so, but what ended up happening was, so this went on, just, you should know, probably 10 to 100 times. Where I tried really to be that guy and to get her attention. And eventually what happened is I stopped trying to be that guy, and I would just come in and say hi to her, and I would sit at her bar and we would just talk, and I just literally, that whole thing just went away and we became friends. And then when one night I was there with other friends and we were all there, it was a Super Bowl Sunday, I remember that, weirdly enough. And so we all walked out together. And as I was taking her, like walking her to her car, I literally just gave her like a mommy kiss. Like, I wasn't trying to do anything by any means, because like to me that ship had never didn't even sail, didn't even make the port. And she stopped me and she said, why did you do that? And my heart went to my stomach, because I was like, I wasn't trying to be.
I just screwed up the friendship.
Yeah, like I really was not my intention. And she stopped me. She's like, I didn't say there was anything wrong with it. I just asked why you did it. And she went in her car and she wrote down her phone number, gave me her phone number. And I was just like, shut up. Who knew?
When I'm talking to you.
Just not being a jerk who was just trying to get your number. That this, and, within a year, so we started dating, and I think it was the following New Year's Eve, I proposed to her.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay.
So, and the day I proposed to her, I actually didn't even know. I knew that I wanted to marry her, but I didn't know it was a New Year's Eve that I was going to propose to her. We were at a friend's wedding, which this is such bad etiquette. It was someone else's wedding, and 12 o'clock hit, and we were dancing. And I said to her, I never want to spend another New Year's without you. And she was like, what are you saying? And I got down on one knee with my own ring that I had on my finger, took it off my finger, and said, will you marry me? And like I could see on this one side, like all my friends, and I know the other ones were all behind us. And I'm thinking to myself, and on the side, I see the bride and groom who now have like no attention on them because it's their wedding.
But they were angry.
Yeah, and thankfully, they were friends, so they weren't as offended as I think they could have been. But yeah, and she said yes, so it was
That's a love story, man. That's beautiful. I love
Sorry.
that. My
Sorry
wife
for
made
being
me
so
chase,
solid.
dude. My wife made me chase. We worked out together platonically for like 3 to 4 months before ever going on a date. I never knew. I thought maybe she was interested. I knew I was, but I had to play it cool, like just like hands off, and just slowly got to know her over time, and eventually worked up the courage to like ask her on a date. And I got that first kiss eventually. It was like slow. She made me chase her. And it's like the first time I ever did that. My relationships always started the other way, you know,
Yep.
kind of. And dude, it's inspiring. It's beautiful. I know Gar has a lot to say about that too.
Nah,
His
man.
eyes were lighting up. He was like, "Oh, I need to meet my dream girl like that."
Nah, I'm like a cyborg, man. I just say right away, hey, I'm interested in you. This is my intentions. This. And it's like if it goes, goes. If not, she might no, not now, and maybe let's work on it. But I'm like, okay, I consider it not interested, so I just leave.
Gar hits on women the same way the Terminator hit on women at the bar.
I'm telling you, man, I'm freaking. That's what I'm saying. I'm a robot, and I tell them everywhere. It's just this is how I am.
You, me.
So what can
sex,
I do?
now?
How old were you when you got married?
Except
I
that.
was 25 when I got married.
Oh,
I'm
wow,
a-
that's pretty young.
I'm a
especially for-
Christian
yeah.
boy.
Yes, and you know it was neat for us. So we had my second daughter. She was actually, you know, without being TMI, a honeymoon baby. But we knew right away that we were going to have more kids, and for us it was neat because, you know, I know a lot of people go through. You hear people, kids today, talking about, you know, we'll have kids when we're ready. And we never experienced that because we never didn't have kids. Like from day one, like I felt like I got 2 for the price of 1. I was
Right.
like, okay, so there was never that feeling of like, you know, what's it going to be like when we have kids? We just always had my oldest daughter. So I was like, you know, this is what we're meant to do. Let's do this.
It'll make you mature pretty quick, I would imagine.
Yes. So we are at 5 kids. Sam is number 3 of 5. And
I was gonna say you should have stopped at 4, but if he was the last one,
Nice.
nah, they are all
sorry, bud.
they're all
Listen, I expect
so
nothing less.
such gifts, each single one of them, such joy, really.
Aw, dude.
It is crazy. You guys could be brothers, man. It's so wild.
We get that a lot. We do get that, which is cool.
That's wild.
What was
man.
it? The flu shot at Target? I think the woman thought we were like just friends.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, because what else do friends do on a Thursday night? We go get flu shots together, as all good friends do.
That's great.
But it's nice though. Your wife, like that shows how mentally mature and like good she is. You know, she didn't like. I would say she gave you a number when you show how nice you are and caring you are and everything, and that's went off. You know, now these days, like you know, a lot of females have that problem. They always say something that is actually wrong.
Yes.
So that was a big green flag right away.
Well, bartending is another one of those red flag. I got called a bar wench when I used to bartend. This lady was telling me about her daughter, and I was like, oh, you know, she was telling me all night, like, and I was like, okay, you know, are you trying to hook us up? And she's like, I'm not, you know, she's in school. I'm not hooking her up with a bar wench. But but I feel like there would have been no chance for you guys for it to play out the way it did if she had just given you that number right away. It could have gone like so many different ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So like he said, giant green flag.
You know, it's funny because my mother-in-law had told my wife while she was growing up, "You'll never meet your husband in a bar." That was her big advice to her. You'll never meet your husband in a bar. And then there was my wife trying to take care of her daughter and her bills and working 2 jobs, and then she meets her husband in a bar.
Pretty wild.
That's funny as hell because it's like I refuse like talk and like a meeting girls in the restaurants or like a clubs type of places. You know, I do refuse that. Like the last time one girl actually, she came up to me herself. I yanked my hand over her. Like,
Wow.
this is like,
He's
because
hardcore, man. He's very
that is the thing. Even when I was working as a security, a lot of people thought like, oh, I getting girls. I actually took, because of my boss, I took so many females home drunk. I left them there, and it's like I wrote my number. If you would feel the same way next day, you can give me a call.
Very
that
nice.
was it. That's why if you ask around in like a Northeast, no one can say anything bad. It's
Good
like
man.
that's how I am, and I've been going to the church for a while, and I'm trying to like preach to the younger generation and stuff like that. So I have to keep myself up to the standards. Like what I preach, I have to do the same thing. That's why it's like every time I go to the club or restaurant, that's only is for invite because of my job. I know a lot of CEOs, this, that, and you know, you have to socialize.
I understand.
Yeah.
See, and I'm totally not that way because, like, you know, even despite
And can you imagine your father is a
it's a what?
preacher?
Oh, I mean, yeah, he is. He has on several occasions. But no, I was just saying it's funny because even like we're all a Christian family, like I haven't had the best luck with the ladies to date, and my parents are always like, well, that's because you're not looking in the right place. And they're saying like I can only find a woman
Absolutely.
in church or whatever. But I totally disagree because I'm like, on the other hand, like, are there probably, you know, as a whole, like you could probably say like percentage wise, more better wives in church, you know, maybe. Sure.
That's the thing. It's a higher possibility.
But then on the same token, I'm like, I feel like not looking in other places, like because somebody was going to meet me in those places and I wouldn't consider myself to be a dingy person. Like if I were to meet a girl at the bar and they called me some guy at the bar, I feel like that'd be a wrong statement. So it's like, on the same token, like there are definitely different people that are in environments where you may not expect to find them, you know?
So here's the thing. Like when you work, so I'm a numbers guy, all right?
Right.
As I said, I'm a freaking cyborg. What can I do? So when I worked 4 or 5 years as a security, right?
Sure.
I saw mostly not good stuff.
Mostly.
And then, exactly, then it just sits in your head. And do I want to risk it for the biscuit, for that 5%, if I will get lucky or not? Or do I want to go to the church and it's actually, let's say, not everyone is an angel these days, but percentage goes up to 50.
This is my parents been married for 27 years, 27 or 28. And they met in the bar.
25.
Well, he defies the norm for sure.
Listen,
You know, so
Exactly.
I think you
That's
kind of have
one
to
of the
agree with him to an
rare.
extent.
But I'm not a risky guy. I will
extent.
risk money. I will risk a lot of things. I will risk my life. I freaking skydive. And I already got to the freaking motorcycle accident like twice.
Right.
So, but the girl, female wise, yeah, I'm a little bit low risk on that part.
Now, for the record, I want to say that, Sam, we have never said you have to meet your wife in church. What we have said was you have definitely shown, for me, if we're being honest on this podcast, which I think we're going to be honest.
I'm about to get parented. I'm
I
about to get parented.
I think we talked about things to look for in a girl and immediate red flags, whether you meet them in church or not. And there have been times when you've told me something, and in 5 minutes, I'm like, that's an immediate red flag. And you're like, no, but I mean, you know, she seems like a good person and blah, blah. So yeah, we're going to go out and I'm like, Sam, I don't know how you don't see this a mile away that this is going to be a challenge, and you still pursue it. And so those aspects, that's on you. Listen, you can meet a great person somewhere that isn't church, but you can really look at the lay of the land. Like when you meet this person, like the things that your boxes you want to check as far as what kind of person they are, what kind of home life they have, what is their background, like really like dive into it and learn some things about them before you ever go on date number one and say, is this something I should pursue? And generally, you don't take the time, in my opinion, to really break that down and say, is this something I should invest myself in?
Absolutely, because
I want to hear Sam.
woman is the biggest investment you will ever make.
What's my here's the thing, because I do have a response to that, and my response would be,
Let's go.
if you were to ask me in all genuine consideration, I'm being realistic here. If you were to ask me in all genuine consideration, I would say at least 75% of the women that I've told my father about that I intended on pursuing anything serious and long term with them, the answer is no. Like, I'm not stupid. You know, I'm not a naive individual. Like, I can tell when, like, this is not someone I should be spending my days with. It is more of like, I'm not in a long committed relationship. This girl seems like she'd be cool to spend some time with. You know, it's not so much I look at this girl and she seems like she might be pursuable wife material. Because seldom that's the case.
There's multiple things that go into this, and I want to hear your opinion on this. You know, so for one thing, you got to remember how young he is, though he doesn't look it. You're 21, right? 21. But on the other hand, you've matured a lot faster than the majority of people your age because of what you've been through and having a child and you know, breaking up with your ex. So there's like these two weird things going on here. So so it depends what you're looking for. I say you might need some time to kind of do the shallow dating, get that out of your system. You know, I didn't hit it until I was like 23, 24, where I was like, I don't have time for this. I don't want to spend late nights out. It's not the right place for me to be. I need to be saving my money. And then you start to like listen to what the woman's core values are and what her ambitions are. That's when you start to hunt for that. And that's something Gar is really good at, is like looking for a good woman, try not to make it just about looks and about like a good time.
Listen, my pops is my right-hand man, so I tell him everything. On the other hand,
That's actually respectful.
on the other hand,
it's beautiful.
On the other hand, if you were to have my mother on this podcast and ask how many girls has Sam told you about in the last year, I think maybe 2. Maybe. How many women have I seen in the last year? It's a higher number than 2. I'm going to leave it at that.
Right.
In all fairness.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I want to keep the topics moving, though, here. So you've been an artist, a musician for how long? And what got you into it? Sam obviously has kind of fallen right into it. And I saw the video of you stepping on the stage with him. And he didn't know. That was beautiful, man. That made me like almost tear up when he showed me that. That was a cool moment.
What a moment.
And so just give us some background on the music and then how you got into, when you got into church, and then we'll even go further back if you like.
Sure. I started playing music at 14. I got a guitar, and it was one of those things where I was that kid. I honestly look back now, and I totally see God's hand all over it when I started playing music, and I didn't know it at the time, but he really saved me from a lot of things that the people around me were getting into. But I was that kid. We were the family that was the Jewish family that celebrated Christmas. Like, we did both just because it was the thing to do, and everybody gave gifts. And I remember my mom asking, what do you want for Christmas? And I had a friend who had a guitar, and I said, how about a guitar? I had no real inkling that I knew of, and it was left field. And she said, okay. She got me this guitar, and it overtook my world. Like, within days, I couldn't put it down. And by within my first year, I was taking lessons, and people would talk to me, and they would get annoyed. They would be like, please stop playing that while you're having conversation. My mom, and I'd be like, Mom, I can totally interact with you. Like, I can do this. And it just became like part of who I was. Now, also at the same time, I had one older brother. And so he, being 3.5 years older, got involved in all the things you wouldn't want your kid to get involved in, with boozing, girls, drugs, like the whole thing. And I love my brother, by the way. My brother's great, and he's clean and sober now. But he was involved in all these things. And here, my mom would leave at this point, and as soon as the door would shut, the basement door would open, and all these people would come in, guys and girls, and they would start doing drinking and drugs and whatever on these TV tables, and it was just mayhem. And there I was, 2 stories up at 14 years old, learning Hotel California solos in my bedroom, and all these things. It was like God was like, I'm going to put you here in this safe spot with this thing I've given you, which eventually I'm going to call on for my own use. You don't know it yet, but I know it, so go do that. So I started playing, and by the time I was 18, I was playing in like local bands and things of that nature. And, it was just, I started singing, and I'll never forget when I was playing guitar and singing, 14 and 15, my mom one day came banging on my door. I wouldn't call it practicing. I was just singing along. And she was like, if you keep screaming like that, you're going to end up sounding like Tom Jones. And all I could think of is, I remember when my father was alive, like watching Tom Jones on TV and seeing these women throwing panties and bras and all these things. And I was just like, I don't know if that was a deterrent or you were telling me to keep at it. Like, I'm not sure what we were going for here. But so, by the time, I said 18, I was in bands, and then early 20s, I was continuing that mission. And then so by the time I was around, I guess it was 25 is when I had started the band Octanes. So had a very good friend of mine who was a booking agent, and he had put together some guys to start this audition. And the thing was, for me, I wanted to have this really heavy band that would do some covers of heavy bands that essentially nobody was doing. So in this whole area, as far as the cover scene was concerned, it was Jesse's Girl and all top 40 and all these songs. It was this, and didn't matter what place you went, you knew what you were going to get, no matter who the band was. You knew the set list. It was just, and I said, if I'm going to do this, I want to play music that I'm going to go home and then I put my head down and feel good about at least what I played. I don't care if nobody comes to see it. I just want to feel good about it, and I want to write and release, do our own music at the same time. So we had some auditions and got some guys together, and it turned out it was like literally lightning in a bottle. And so within our first 2 years, we were playing these really big shows. We started writing and recording, and by year number 3, we were recording in Studio 4, which is in Conshohocken, with Phil Niccolo. Phil Niccolo is the guy, he's recorded everybody from Bon Jovi to Springsteen and whatever, and we were doing albums with him, and radio, TV, touring. I got to play with many of my childhood idols. I remember, one of my most fondest memories was singing the Beatles rock and roll music as a duet with Gene Simmons from Kiss. And I was like, I had Kiss lunchboxes, you know what I mean? Like growing up, like I had like action figures and there we are like face to face. And like, I'm thinking, like we were his backup band for this event. And I'm thinking, I'm the backup guy. Well, here he comes and grabs me off of like, I was just singing harmonies in the back and he grabs me off of the drum riser and starts do-si-doing me around the stage, arm in arm and like singing face to face. And I'm like, man, if this isn't like one of like the coolest.
If 14-year-old could see, 15-year-old, 14-year-old could see you now. Like, oh my God.
Like, and it was like, so, as we were going, and things were continuing to take off, we were on video game soundtracks, we were on radio, TV. I still had for me this really strange, like longing of like, okay, this is all great, but something is missing. Now, mind you, I should tell you, like during this time, people are like, so you were living the rock and roll lifestyle. So I was playing rock and roll, but I wasn't drinking, wasn't doing drugs, wasn't getting caught up with girls. In fact, we used to have this thing whenever we would go and play in other states and things like that. There were always 2 hotel rooms. One was the hotel room if you wanted to go back and hang out, and one was what they called the Bat Cave, which was my hotel room, which they knew when the end of the night came, if you wanted to go to bed, you went to Bortnick's room and you would go back there, and that's where the lights went out. You went to bed and you woke up the next morning. Whatever happened in the other room, don't bring it over here. This room was not for that. So it was even through that time, like God was like kind of keeping his hand on me, like, no, I'm going to watch over you and I'm going to protect you. And we had, Jägermeister was sponsoring us. Budweiser was sponsoring us. They were sending us guitars. They were giving us money. And, all of those things were great. And I was like getting more and more like convicted because at this point I had become saved. So my relationship with Jesus was growing, and the more and more I was reading in my Bible, the more I was understanding, that not only did Jesus die on this cross and make a way of salvation for me to spend eternity with him and for anyone else who calls on him by name, but also that I had a responsibility to share this good news with other people. And so at first that was really difficult for me because I was like, well, this is uncomfortable. And then, I kind of came to the realization, well, the act of hanging on a cross for my sins was probably not very comfortable either for my Savior, but he did it for me. So by late 2006, and like I said, things were going really well for the worldly view of the band. Things are going like this.
So you were married at this point?
I was married.
Okay.
Yeah, when I started Octane, I was married. In fact, my wife was one of the people who was like, you should do this. You should go play heavy music, no matter what anybody says. You should do it because it's a love you.
Where was she religiously at that point? Did you guys find God together, or?
So my wife, so she was born and raised a born again Christian, and then had kind of fallen away from it, prodigal, if you will, only when life kind of went a little haywire for her because in her teens, her parents had got divorced, and she kind of fell into this like I need to figure out how to manage life on my own, and
she lost faith.
It's. I don't even want to say she lost faith because I don't think she did, but I think she didn't have any support system and became a little bit subject to surrounding circumstances. So, in fact, this is actually how I got saved. When we were married for just a few years and we had our first 2 kids, I actually started. She would read her Bible every day. This is when she'd come back to the Lord. Like I don't want to say come back, but I'm saying really had started refocusing on her faith. And I would see her reading every day and talking to my mother-in-law about her faith. And so I started reading her Bible when she wasn't home because I was going to dispel what was in the Bible. I'm like, I'm going to be the guy to figure this out. I'm going to tell her like, this is why this is shenanigans. And so I started reading the Bible, and the more and more I started reading the Bible, the more and more I realized I was like, Lord, you are real and you have been here the whole time. And please forgive me because I have been so aloof. And, that's what he does. And so by 2006, I got to the point where, we had met with the guys from Disturbed. They had their own record label at the time.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got to play with them, and great dudes. They actually came and saw us in Philly while they were recording their second album, Believe, into a club. They came to watch us, and people were just like,
"That's nuts!
What is happening?"
I just want to cut him real quick before you continue. I feel like God almost used your ego to play you into finding Him.
I would not argue.
He's
with
got
that
a sense of humor, man.
Oh my gosh, 100%, 100%. Yes.
Right, go ahead. I just had to say that before I forgot.
All good. So we were supposed to be the first band on their label. So David and Dan from Disturbed had a label imprint that was given to them from Warner Brothers. So they were meeting with us, they were courting us, they were taking us to dinner, like all good things. And they sent this guy from LA who was like a huge Warner Brother guy. Like he had all these credits to his name to come see us. So he comes and sees us. And the club that he came to see us in, you couldn't fit another body in there. And it was so hot, it was like it was going to rain. It was that like humid in the club. And he comes in, and I could even hardly hear myself singing because every person there was singing so loud to our songs. Like I literally would put the mic out, and it was mayhem. It was everything in my mind you would want a rock band to be. Well, this guy had went back to LA and said, yeah, like, I'm just not sure whether or not this is the right move for us, that we need another metal band, or we should go with something. And those guys wanted a metal band. They didn't want to be involved with some poppy whatever. So truth be told, at the end of it, he actually pulled their imprint for their label, and the label, they took it away from the guys from Disturbed. So them losing their label meant we lost that in. And so now, obviously I look back, and that was God's sovereignty in a beautiful way that would happen, because I don't know that every one of us was ready for it or would have survived at that time, because not everybody was where they are now, which is everybody's in a good place and everybody's, but I really just think that God was saying to me, like, this is not what I want for you, at least for right now. So I went into this place where I was like, Lord, what do you want me to do? And he really made it clear to me, like, I want you to use your gifts, the things I've given you, for me. So I still bucked against it until I got to, we had a band practice one day, which was actually an intervention. I wasn't aware of that. Are we okay on time for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
It was actually an intervention. I didn't know that. So I pull up to the band room.
Cut up by 2, you said?
Sounds like that.
Okay, we got 30 minutes. We're good.
Okay. So I pull up to this band room, which is our band room. And usually if you were like 2 blocks away, you could hear, like you could hear it as you were pulling up. And I pull up, and there's no noise, but all the cars are there. And I'm like, okay. So I go in, and I'm like, maybe they're on break, whatever. And I walk in, and everybody's sitting on the couches. Nobody's behind an instrument. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
okay. So I roll in, and I sit down, and I'm like, what's going on? They're like, listen, we've noticed that you have been coming to shows right before we go on. We noticed that you leave as soon as the last note is played. You're not bringing new music at all to the band. Where are you at? Now, mind you, like, this is a band that I literally started from day one, and out of my mouth comes, I'm not the guy for the job anymore. And it was like the air was sucked out of the room. Like, we were all just like, because I didn't know, obviously, going in there, that I was going to say it. I didn't know they were going to ask it, but I just knew, God, this isn't what you want from me. And so, their immediate response was, well, do you want to take some time and think about it? And I was like, no. So I leave there, and I was just like, listen, I said, I'll stay for a little while. If you guys want to find somebody, whatever you want to do, I would never leave you hanging, because to this day, like, we're brothers. Like, and those guys were supportive and loved me, and they understood where my head and heart were at. They knew that I wasn't like, I'm going to join some other project or whatever. Like, it wasn't that. It was God's doing something in my life that I have to be obedient to. So I leave there. I called my wife. And so now, mind you, she's at home with 2 small children and 1 on the way. And I told her what happened. And now, mind you, this is also our sole source of income.
I was just going to say, you're making a living
so she
off
was
this.
she was at home taking care of our kids, and this is our sole source of income. And she said to me, we both know this isn't where God wants you right now. So he'll take care of us. And I go and, start making phone calls to every youth group director I knew. I was like, hey man, can I come in and share with your kids? Can I come in? Is there anywhere, I can share my testimony or this? And, the first thing out of their mouth is, there's no money in this, right? I'm like, yes, don't care. I just need to share my story with anybody who's willing to listen. So I started going on this youth group / church tour of sharing some of the songs I was writing about my faith. And about 1.5 years later, my mother-in-law, who at the time worked for NASA, and was also usually in bed by like 7:30, 8 o'clock, who lived in Maryland, calls my wife one night at 10:30 and says, I just got this email to my nasa.gov email address for a worship leader position in Ambler, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
I wanted to call you. So the fact that she was awake, the fact that she got a worship leader resume like thing sent to her NASA.gov thing out of nowhere, right? So my wife tells me, I'm like, all right, Lord, I'm listening. So I went to this church because I didn't want to just apply. I wanted to go in, was like, are they preaching the word? Are they being true to, just, this isn't like a regular job where you're like, yeah. Cool. How much is it an hour?
Right.
So I went there and the word was being taught well. And so I did end up applying, and I did end up getting the position. And when they called me to offer me to be their worship leader, it was funny because they had said, there were several other applicants who had more experience and qualifications on paper, but there was just something about not only the way that you led our worship team, but you personally, that we all felt like you were the person God was sending here. And I was like, that's really awesome, and kind of neat. And so I served there for almost 10 years. Then I was at another church, and now I've been at the same church for 4 years. But a few years back, so things have started happening again with Octane. And I say that because we started making some music, so I told you I initially left them in 2006. Around 2012, 13, we just thought, this would be a cool idea. Why don't we? And at this point, I was a worship pastor. That's what I was doing. They were like, we should just get together to have a show just for the fun of it. And I'm thinking, I don't even know if anybody's still interested. It's been 6 or 7 years. And we did a show, and they had to stop the door at 1,400 people. And it was an absolute mob scene. And I was like, this is crazy. So we did that. And then the following year, they had us at the Electric Factory, or in the same year, at New Year's Eve, they brought us to the Electric Factory, which was a great turnout as well. And so what happened was, I said to the guys, I said, listen, I would love to still be able to do some shows from time to time, things like that. I said, but I can only do this if I'm able to sing and talk about my faith openly. And they said to me,
Respect.
Yeah. And they said to me, we never told you couldn't to begin with. It was more something I had done.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, to myself.
You had to distance yourself, though, probably,
I did. And you know what? It also took me a lot of time. Now I'm at a place, so we're working on new music right now. We are actually one of the bands on main stage for the WMM Barbecue this year, so with Alice in Chains and 3 Days Grace, which is going to be great. And, I had to get to a point where I understood, and I didn't at first. I think I was putting these kind of chains on myself, or maybe God was just making sure that I understood my role in his plan. But you can do something that is not a worship pastor or just working for a church and be a faithful, obedient follower of Jesus Christ. So there's nothing wrong with me going and singing, especially if I'm writing lyrics and having these songs and letting people know where my head and heart are at as far as my faith openly. That's okay. There's people who are sports guys who believe in Christ. There's people who are singers. There's people who, in whatever you can think of the vocation might be, who are have faith in Jesus. And I just was like, you know what? I can do this. And so, now whenever there's opportunities, it's harder on some shows if we're on somebody else's show. But if it's our show, the guys give me an opportunity in the middle of the show to break it down for one acoustic song where I share with the people who are there my faith and explain to them. And I always make sure when I share that this is what Christ has done in my life. I would never tell somebody else what they need to do, what they should do. If you don't do this, you're this. There's no fire and brimstone when I talk to people, because I just want them to know what he's done in my life, and hopefully let them know they have the same opportunity should they choose it. The rest is between them and him, not between them and myself.
Well, and it's such a huge platform for you to be able to spread that word, your message, your story, and outside of your church and whatnot. It's kind of almost like a superpower. You're able to double dip into an entire different demographic.
Yes, and it's funny. When I right after I'd left the band initially, there was a record label that was interested, a Christian record label that wanted to work with me. And so we started talking, and we kind of went through this whole courting process and went back and forth to Nashville a few times. And they had said, hit me back up and said, we can't do this with you. And I was like, why? And they said, well, we know that you're still playing in clubs. We know that you're still playing in these bars. And I was like, I understand. I said, and none of this said I kept close to the vest. I told them all those things. I said, do you really only want an artist who's going to share the gospel with people in a church? I said, because that's not how Jesus went at all. I said, if you want to send anybody, I wouldn't know who they are, into an establishment any night and say, is he smoking? Is he drinking? Is he cursing? Is he picking up girls? Is he dishonoring God in any way? I invite you to send anybody day or night. Wherever I am, send them. And because there were so many times that I would be in let's say some bar, and I would be playing, and I would, in my cover sets, I would include worship songs all the time. And at the end of the night, I would run into some guy who was like, we'll just say, some biker who had, and I use biker affectionately. I have tons of friends who are bikers, but I'm saying this would happen quite frequently because of the kind of music I was playing that, it's rock and roll. And there would be like, 5 empty Grolsch bottles on the pool tables they were playing. And at the end of the night, as soon as I go to pack up, they would say something like, I was raised in a Catholic church. And they would just start the conversation based on things they had heard me play. And we would get in these conversations, and this would be a Saturday night where we would get out of there at 4 a.m. and guess what? I was leading worship in the church the next morning, and they would be there. They would come to the church. Over and over this would happen, and I was just like, if nobody had been there last night in that bar to witness, this guy might not be here today. I'm not taking credit for it, but God did something here. It's all the glory to him.
He saved him pretty much through you.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
And so they didn't knew about that you were actually singing those type of songs, and that's where their thing was about. Like, no, man, you cannot be in this Christian type of music because of you.
Yes.
But now they do, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
That's
this
beautiful.
is amazing, man. This is amazing.
Yeah, this is excellent, man. I'm so happy we had you on, man. I really appreciate your time.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
I want to keep the topics moving. So this is organic right here. So that was incredible. Now tell us what inspires you, and then on top of that, I was kind of wanted to ask you: did you never go down that road of like the drugs, and the sex, and the girls because you saw what it was doing to your brother, or did you just never have any interest? Was there ever any temptation, or was it something that had inspired you earlier on?
So that's a good question. So my whole, if we go back to before music, so I grew up in a house, it was mom, dad, my brother, and myself. And mom was a homemaker. Dad was a vending machine repair technician and a collection person for a vending machine place back in the day when there were pinballs and video games. I got to witness the whole birth of that. And my father, when I was 8 years old, went out, one morning, as he would always do, on a routine collection. And while he was on this routine collection, was met by 3 armed gunmen who took his life in an effort for him. He tried to save this woman behind the counter, who it turns out in the court case when it came through, she actually knew about it and had told these guys
It was
what day. Yeah, the guy came, and so he was shot 3 times. And it was just one of those things that really like shakes your foundations as a kid. So, I want to say at this point in my life, like, again, I see God's hand in all these things, but like what shook me, like, I was raised customarily Jewish. So we were the people who went to synagogue like twice a year. Like the people who are customarily, Christian or whatever.
Or Catholic.
Right, or Catholic, right. And so, but when this happened to me, like there was this, your parents tell you like, there's no monsters under the bed. You believe them. They tell you, whatever. They tell you, I'll see you tomorrow. And all of a sudden, I'll see you tomorrow was not true. Like my dad literally, I remember him saying that the night before when he put us to bed, like, I'll see you guys when I get home from work tomorrow. And so it put this like disconnect in me where for the longest time, like I didn't really have faith in anything.
It was a hard reality check at a really young age.
Right. So, which also I attribute to my brother being a couple years older to what, pushed him into doing some of the stuff he did. But for me, by the time this all leads to, by the time I was like 10, do you guys ever hear Big Brothers Big Sisters of America? The organization.
I have. Is that helping people with drug abuse or whatnot?
So no,
kind of like a mentor or
so it's a mentor. So Big Brothers and Big Sisters, what they do, the organization, is they match kids up with a mentor and somebody just to kind of help them and guide them and just through life. So I was fortunate enough. So we got matched up. I was 10 when I met my big brother, and he just passed away this year. So we were friends 41 years, and he would the commitment was 3 hours a week. That's what your big brother is supposed to spend with you. He was a student at Drexel at the time. He was working, and so you say to yourself, like, what kind of man would want to pour into a kid who has just had his father murdered and is at this place in life and all of these things while going to school, while being 22? Like, I remember myself at 22, and I definitely would not have been like, let me carve this time. And Mike totally did that. And not only did he do that, but he, like 3 hours a week was nothing. Like 9 a.m. would come Saturday morning, and he was at my house, and he would leave sometime after 7, 8 o'clock every Saturday. It was phone calls all during the week, just checking in. Yo, how's your day? Like, what's going on? And I remember it because, like, you know, it wasn't like I have to call. It was these phone calls of, like, you know, who's the cutest girl in school? Like, you know, like just wanting to know what my world was like.
Being a real big brother.
Right. So not only was our relationship like this, like he was my person. And so I remember being like 15 and him coming to me, like he knew my brother had gotten mixed up and stuff and was continuing to get mixed up, and my mom would share things with Mike. And Mike came to me and said, listen, I just want to tell you, I know what's going on with your brother and I know these things. And if I ever find out that you're doing drugs or you're drinking or you're getting mixed up in any of these things, it will change our relationship. And that's all he said. There was no threat. There was no scream. There was no anything, but my relationship with him meant so much to me. Like I cared about him so much and I trusted him. Like, you know, I tell people, like, one of the things I remember my father saying to me was, before he passed away, like, I remember him saying as kids, like, you know, if you're lucky enough to have 5 friends in your life that you can call at any point in time, you know, you should consider yourself a blessed man if you have 5 of those. And I am grateful to this day that I can say I have way more than 5 of those people. Like, I'm so beyond grateful, but, you know, I might not be able to count them, but I can tell you who the first person I ever met, who I knew I could call day or night, and they were my guy. And he was my guy. Like, you know, like I knew. So when he said that to me, it was just enough that even when I got into music and everything, you know, like there was social drinking when I was young because that was the thing to do and I didn't learn any better yet. But very early on, like that just kind of fell by the wayside to the point where I was like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. It doesn't even feel good. Like, and I never got into drugs at all. It wasn't like I was like, I dabbled in this, like nothing.
So,
like
so to answer your question, this is why he looks so substantially younger than I do.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what,
you could learn something from him.
I could not to interject, but I had to say something. So if you were wondering why it is that I'm 21 years of age and he's 50, not to expose you, 51,
that's all good.
That would be the reason why. So sorry, continue.
I'd love to segue too. After this, as far as you know, if you're eating clean, what that looks like, if, exercise, any stuff. You look like a pretty fit guy.
Yeah, so I do try to eat clean except for the holidays. The holidays are a mess because
Let's go.
Like I said, yeah, my wife being Italian, there's food everywhere.
Does she make good scratch pasta and salads?
Oh, it's everything. It's cookies. It's baked good. It's prime rib. It's just there's food everywhere, and so I just
You
try
should be a big boy, man.
I try not to listen. I used to be when I was growing up. I was 240. I was in a size 44 pants. My mother used to have to take me to the tailor to get. You couldn't get my height and my waist in the same pants.
Okay.
So I was huge for years and like my early teens, and then like puberty kicked in and height, got a little bit of height. But as I became an adult, one of the things that was like life changing for me fitness wise was, you know, and I tried several things. My wife has always been very big on working out. Was she said when she initially had seen P90X on TV, she said, I saw this thing on there. And if
Tony Horton.
Yes. She was like, I saw this thing on TV. She's like, you know, and it looks like it would be really challenging. You know, if it's something you would like to try, I'll get it for you. She's like, but you need to know 2 things. Number 1, don't do it for me because I'm fine with you how you are. She said, and number 2, if this doesn't work for you, I need you to put it to bed and stop beating up on yourself for not feeling like
What
you
a
want to
smart
feel.
woman. Jeez.
She is.
What a
and
win-win.
so yeah, so we end up, she buys this P90X program. And this is the funniest thing. So like, you know, we get it, and I get the pull-up bar, and I remember day 1, it's chest and back. And I had the pull up in the door and the bar in the door, and my family was sitting on the couch, you know, so I'm press play, you know, the first move is like push-ups, then you got pull-ups because you're alternating. And so I did the push-ups and I eked out, you know, like 6 or 7 push-ups, and then came the pull-ups, and I kind of might have gotten 2. And then I did the next set of push-ups, which was like 2. And then I went to the pull-ups, and I was literally like hanging and trying to pull myself up. So I came off the bar, and I just turned over and looked to the other side because I was turning around, and I saw my whole family do one of these.
Oh, man.
Like they didn't want to look like they had watched me just miserably fail and move forward.
And that's when you knew you were going to follow through with it.
That was exactly, I was like, I am freaking going to do this. And in 90 days, and it was really, by the end of the 90 days, there was not a move that went by that I didn't end the move because the timer went out. Not because I failed in it. I was like, I'm going to do every unassisted pull up. I'm going to do every unassisted push up. And I did. And it physically gave me a completely different mindset, and it was the first time, I ever walked around sleeveless shirts, and I was just like, this is this is great. And so it has carried with me since that time, where I maintain, I do work out at home, but I do all sorts of the Beachbody programs, and I love that Sam had started in that realm, but there's such a gift to being able to work out. It's just like, teaching music. I run into people all the time. They're like, I can learn on YouTube, and I'm like, there's only so much. There's, and I love that I can work out at home because I have enough experience with it, but you can't beat having a personal physical trainer in person. There's something about somebody who can watch your form. Like, I can do those videos all day long. If I make a mistake, I'm liable to get injured. Nobody's going to help me and pinpoint what is going to give me better results.
You can get really far on your own, man. And even me, working out for years and years and years, different things. But my gym teacher had something called pain, so he would send us home with homework that our parents would have to sign off on. So 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and then the next week it's 200, and then it's 300, and that's what got me into it. And then I started getting into the gym and stuff. But I worked out for years, and when I finally got certified as a personal trainer, I realized the value and how much I was missing out on and just doing entirely wrong.
Yes.
So yeah, absolutely, a lot of value to be had.
It certainly is. Yeah, and because I've had there's a couple really cool music video games. The game that got Sam started on playing the guitar is a game called Rocksmith, which is actually you plug a real guitar.
I got it.
In your PlayStation, you can learn to play her.
He jams a little bit. You guys got to talk some music. He has some cool guitars.
I'm a rookie though. I'm a rookie compared to you guys.
No, come on.
Let's not make this a repeat of the one where did my interview when we talked about guitars for 25 minutes because it's just completely irrelevant.
I know.
Hey man, there's nothing bad about that.
But listen, we all love music.
This is all
and
relevant.
we'll all consolidate and talk about as much music stuff as we want when we're not doing an interview.
Well,
don't worry, I'm not going to steal your dad. Okay, relax. You don't have to be jealous.
I'm fine with it. I just don't want to get the phone call from Mitch later. Listen, we got to redo that podcast.
No,
one segment that was 35 minutes about different guitars.
Don't be a crybaby. It's all right.
This it's funny. I was busting his chops because every time we're on the podcast, I was like, I noticed a trend. Like he just loves to talk about music. He has a passion for it, and I started busting his chops about it. So that's what he's referring to here. But this is good, and this has all been extremely organic. This has just been one smooth segue into the next.
Sweet. Well, yeah, I'm a huge proponent of the people using tools, and I've had students, parents say to me when I would recommend them like that game, I would say, hey, you should definitely, and they're like, why would you recommend that? Because you're a teacher. Like, don't you feel like that might take away? I'm like, anything that makes your kid want to plug the guitar in and play is good. Just like anything that makes if you have people that you're trying to train and you can excite them and make them want to work out because you've given them a plan.
Gamify it or something. There's ways to do that. Like even the Wii Fit. Remember that when that came out? Like
yes,
that's
I do.
That's movement.
The guy who made that was the guy who created the original Donkey Kong, and he felt like he had put so many hours into making people sedentary that he felt like it was this thing before he passed away that he wanted to do something that would actually make people move.
It's almost like, I don't know if restitution is the right word, but like trying to make up for it. Wow.
Yep.
That's a pretty cool story, actually. That's amazing. But that's not like a video game where you're just sitting sedentary, eyes glued to a screen for hours, working your thumbs. It's a very different concept. But I get why parents would be like, oh, it's a game.
Yes.
I understand that. I can see it. What about your diet? Talk about that real quick. What do you eat? Try to eat as clean as you can, you said, right?
I do.
Except for the holidays, but you didn't really dive in too much. Do you ever count macros, or do you just try to stay mindful?
So I do try to stay mindful. I try to eat. One of the things that I found really helpful was there's a guy named David Zinczenko who wrote a book called The Abs Diet. He used to be an editor for Men's Health magazine, and he really focused on he calls it the 3-2-3, which is you have your first meal, 3 hours later you have a snack, 2 hours later you have your next meal, and then you repeat that cycle. So what happens is every time you get to your next meal, you're not starving, which I love. And I also love eating, 5 to 6 times a day because first I love food, and I don't like to be that guy. I'm not into the starvation thing. I've done intermittent fasting and all that, and while I can do it and I've seen results from it, I don't ever feel like my mental focus, my energy ever stays the same for me. And there's people who say, if you go into ketosis, you'd be shocked that I'm not going 2 days or 3 days without eating because I don't want to.
Right.
And I'm not being paid to be a fitness model. If I was being paid to be a fitness model and I had to go for that completely lean, ripped, blah, blah, listen, I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to feel like, good in my clothes and things like that. You got to ask yourself too, what are your goals? And I feel like that's where a lot of people go wrong. They're like, they want the bodybuilder
They
physique.
think they want.
Right, and they don't know what it takes to put into that. If you really want that, you better look at it on paper, what it's going to take to get there, and make that commitment. Because if you're going to half-heart that, you are not going to get your goal, because those people work diligently to get in that kind of shape. So, I eat my breakfast almost every day. I have a protein shake. I have 1 cup of oats with half almond milk and half water. I do sometimes with the scoop of peanut butter in that. Then a couple hours later, I'll have whatever. I have snack. Usually it's some kind of non-fat, straight up yogurt, no sugar yogurt. Lunch, I'm a huge peanut butter fan. I love peanut butter a lot of times. My wife makes homemade sourdough, so I usually have peanut butter and sourdough as a big thing for me.
What day does she make it on of the week, man?
Multiple days. There's
Really?
always a starter
Oh,
somewhere.
man.
Yes, a lot of times I can't make coffee in my microwave. I can't heat it up because there's starters doing whatever they do in there, proofing.
Don't touch my
Proofing.
yeast.
Yeah, don't touch the starters. I'm like, okay. Afternoon snack is usually another protein shake, and then for dinner I try to eat something healthy, and then I try to cut it off usually around 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock I'm done for the night, which gets me, I usually don't start again until breakfast for me is usually between 9 and 10, because I do like to wake up, have my coffee, do my Bible and devotional, workout before I eat. And with my workout, I do 1 scoop of hydration, and I use creatine.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of their stuff. It's the pH balance,
Yeah.
because I have found for myself that if I use other creatines, a lot of times I'm prone to cramping. I don't know if it's because I'm lower in body
That's
fat or
actually
whatever.
weird, because it's actually puts more water on your body.
Yeah.
The creatine. So
Yeah.
that's weird.
I don't know what makes it, and I'm not necessarily saying it's the creatine, but I know some people have said that it's a side effect of creatine. So I can't confirm or deny that, but I do know that I'm better when I do use a hydration drink, and I also know I'm better when I take my multivitamin because it's high in magnesium. So those two things help me.
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
overall, you need
Yeah.
magnesium, and if you're low in magnesium or potassium, you're gonna cramp.
Yeah.
Even salt. Like,
Yep.
That's what I do all the time too. So
Did you ever use that? What is it? It's not the Himalayan one. It's like that Celtic sea salt.
So I do Redmonds.
Okay.
Redmonds. I just chug that shit. Like,
Okay.
like this. I open it.
Redmond makes us like a dinner salt.
Yeah, they're just a regular salt, and it's.
I've tried their
non-filtered everything.
electrolyte powder. My client highly recommended. I tried it. My wife took it all.
I just took a regular salt. That's what I do in the morning, right in the morning.
Okay.
Yes.
Then Gar, you
It's
also
disgusting, but I drink water.
Yeah.
you also blast 500 megs of Tren a week as well, right?
Don't put your shit at me, my friend. he just saying that because he wanna hear how his dad will react to it. Then
My dad doesn't know.
probably
My dad doesn't know what Tren is.
I
He has
gotta
no
tell
idea.
you-
He has
Yes,
a
I do.
phone. He
Yes,
can
I
Google
do.
it.
He knows.
Up.
Yes.
I gotta
You are
say,
burned, my friend.
Gar, the first time I unofficially met this man, I was calling Sam. I forget what we were talking about. It was night of your concert, maybe
Which one?
at Broken Goblet.
Oh, okay.
And you were in the car on your way to get like a shirt at Target or something, and he just says the most ridiculous stuff, and I was like, "You're in the car with your dad. I feel uncomfortable. I don't know this guy. I don't know." And he was just going along with it, and I was like, "Okay, like this is cool, I guess." Like,
My dad will.
I-
My dad will
Stuff.
whoop my ass.
Don't be fooled by the tame persona. I came from that man.
yeah.
Okay, so you got to remember,
You're-
at the end of the day, don't make this weird, Garcevan. Don't do it. Don't give me that glance, that little smirk. That's,
you
I was about to spit fire, but okay, I'm gonna let you live.
that little foreign scour that you give once in a while.
Why is it gotta be foreign?
No,
Guys,
because
to stay on topic, we're running out of time, and this man has so much value to share. So, I just wanted to ask you if you got any personal practices, hacks, tactics that you would like to share with our listeners that you think it doesn't have to be related to fitness whatsoever. It could just be how to get along, how to get further in life. Anything that pops to mind.
I would just tell people, write yourself, figure out what's important. And for me, I would tell anyone who is not in a place where they have a relationship with the Lord, I would really encourage you to seek that out, because for a lot of people, they're like, I tried that, or, I grew up in this way, and, I had this problem in church, or, and a lot of times people confuse things that have happened with man, and they blame God for them, and God's not to blame for those things. So if you have the time or the energy, you should make it for yourself. I think it would be life-changing, and I mean that for eternity, that you would build a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I would also say to you, there's a lot of times when people are like, I'm cool with the big guy or things like that. And, I would say to you, if you had a girlfriend and you only called her twice a year, what would your relationship look like? and it wouldn't exist. It would be non-existent. You would have no closeness. So I would encourage you to get close with God. And I say that in a way that he is waiting for every single one of us just to get to know him, to be in a relationship with us. And it's unbelievable. And I would pray it for you. And it's as simple as you committing and saying, Lord, I accept you, Jesus, as my Lord and Savior. And I ask for your forgiveness for my sins. And please lead my life. And make me yours, and recognize that you died on a cross for my sins, and I ask for your forgiveness and your grace, and to be born again in Jesus' great name, and you'd be born again. And so I want to pray that for every single person who's listening to this, that you will do that, because I don't think there's anything else I could offer, whether it be for fitness, whether it be for music, whether it be for life, that would be more important than that for you.
That's powerful, man.
Amen.
What's something you would tell your younger self?
I would say...
Loaded questions, I know. I was supposed to send you this template. I wasn't in communication with you. I hope Sam maybe did.
Sam did not, but
Okay,
that's
I
okay.
was It's on me.
I
It's
was
on me.
not given a template, Mitchell. Do not.
You
put
have
this-
it. I texted it to you.
like 3 years ago.
No, like 2 episodes ago.
Okay.
Let your father speak.
I would just say, I would say, hang tight. I would say, trust in the Lord, and I would say, don't lean on your own understanding, which is, in the Bible, but it's so true. Like, there's so many things where I tried to lean on my own understanding that, just didn't work out because I was trying to navigate things that were not mine to navigate.
It's like bouncing around in the gym for years without the proper knowledge and the expert guidance.
Yep.
That's why I've been on it too. Like, I have a spiritual father. Like, pastor always asks stuff. He's been like taming me more, because as you figure out, I already talk shit about Italians and everything. I'm like machine gun.
But we all are human, and we all are sinners, which is okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, listen,
man.
if you had it 100% right, if I had it 100% right, we wouldn't need a savior. Listen,
Absolutely,
And sometimes that turns people away. I get people tell me all the time, you get that if I go into the church, it's going to be on fire. I'm like, well, clearly not, because I've been in there and it hasn't gone on fire yet, and I know what I am. So,
Hey, listen, yeah, absolutely, because it's like for me, I'm too big of a mouth for 2025, right? And that's why I need to choose more how to talk. If I say like a shit to others, stuff like that, doesn't mean I hate them. It just, that's the personality. Army, we always talk shit at each other and stuff like that. It's, if you will get into the army, especially mechanics, oof. That's the darkest joking area. You can, we had a few guys just run out. We cannot do this. So from other
Scared him
MOS,
off.
we were talking so much nonsense. But yeah, it's like he's being like leading me right and trying to calm me down.
he's
more
refining you.
Yeah.
Amen.
He's going to be leaning on God heavy for that, man.
Yeah, I mean, I've been abstinent for a while and stuff like that. That's why I've been getting heavy. That's why when I said I don't date girls, I will talk to them. Because you still want to ask questions, this and that. But at this moment, I always been proven right. My position towards not really taking towards the dating stuff. And dating, in my opinion right now, it's people take it the wrong way. It's like a slipping around this, that for a year straight. For me, it's listen, if I took you in a way that we are serious, I already consider you as a wife.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So it's just matter of time when you go to marry.
Nice.
That's the way
Very
to find
nice.
the right one, man. I already know what one of these answers is going to be, but do you have any resources, books, podcasts?
What do you think the one answer is going to be?
Go ahead.
The Bible?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any books, podcasts? So the Bible. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Anything and everything, man.
I love, as far as podcasts, I'm a huge fan of a gentleman named Devory Darkins, who's online, who gives very nonpartisan political background. People would probably say he's right-leaning, but he uses Ground News. I don't know if you've ever used Ground News,
Yeah.
which is a great website that gives you news sources. And when you put in anything you're searching for in the news, you can immediately see whether it leans left, leans right, and then you can do what they call the blind spot, where you can just get the unbiased versions that this thing sorts out. It's pretty neat. So Ground News. But I would say he's great. There's a guy named Dr. Steve Turley I love to listen to. Also excellent. And as far as podcasts go, I love Sam. What's I can't believe I can't think of his name. Singer Skillet.
John Cooper.
John Cooper's podcast is fantastic. If you've never listened to it, John Cooper's Singer Skillet, fantastic podcast, and he's a believer, but he speaks on all sorts of topics, and he's just really, entertaining. I like the band Skillet as well, so it's a win-win for me.
Yeah,
but
that's why I'm shocked. Like,
Yeah.
I've listened to them too.
he is very well-spoken, very entertaining, and has some great guests on too. So I would say definitely check that out. And as far as books to read, aside from the Bible, some of my favorites, I would point you to Cesar Millan books, because, and I say that being a dog guy, but also there's a lot of things you can learn about your own behavior by how your dog acts and reacts to what you're doing. You can find places where you're not being calm, find places where you're not being centered, find places where you're not being a leader by the way your dog acts and reacts. And if you look at, just take the White House, for instance, when is the last time, and it's been quite some time, that you saw a powerful breed of dog as the White House dog? You don't see that, because a lot of times politicians are so all over the place, or following someone else's lead, or donors or whatever. They're not necessarily leaders. There's someone who's in that place. And when you look at, if you're going to have a White House dog that's a Pit or a Doberman or a Shepherd, that all great dogs, but all dogs that require a strong leader, there's a reason they don't usually put them in the White House.
That's interesting.
That's good. That's actually a good call.
What's the White House dog right now with the current administration?
I don't know, because I know that, was it the Biden one that bit somebody?
Probably a Yorkie.
I think you heard about that. I think that was recently, right?
Like a little,
Yes.
One of those like Shih Tzu mixes.
Was it an ankle biter?
Yes.
I'm interested to see what they get in there with Trump.
What do you think about Belgian Malinois?
Malinois? I thought
Yeah.
it was Malinois.
Yeah.
Malinois?
My
It's
bad.
like a German Shepherd cousin or something like that. They're cool.
They're
badass.
great, and they're beautiful. The thing that I think, I would tell anybody, if you're going to go dog and get a dog, if you've never had one, you really need to see what their needs are. I had a friend who bought an Australian Shepherd, which is, like these are dogs that are meant to herd, and they are like the most sedentary people that I know, and they bought this dog, and they were like then complaining, like, I guess we're gonna have to get a trainer and all these things. I'm like, you bought a working dog because of its looks. Like, just know what you're getting. If you want a dog that's got low energy, do some research first, find one, and then find the one of that breed that you love. Don't just go get a dog because you like the look of it. You really need to see, and Malinois are great, but if you look at the
It's a service dog. That's the thing. It's
you need
like
to
a high energy. It's like energy like a husky and super smart.
Yeah, when in your reels, you're like, oh my gosh, this dog just jumped off this guy's back into the air, grabbed this flagpole, jumped up the wall. You're like, are you going to be the one to take that dog out 19 times a day? If you're not, like, I walk my dogs 2 miles a day.
point.
At
It's
least.
a good point.
Listen, my plan is to have a bunch of kids, so they're gonna keep him busy,
Yes, they will.
and
Yes,
he's
they
gonna
will.
protect them when Daddy will not be home. So
Yes.
Well, owning a dog, it's not like a hobby. You can't like pick it up and then figure it out as you go. You got to
Yeah.
do that front end research.
It's like
That's
parenting
a
to a
living
degree.
human, like not a human being, obviously,
Yes.
but that's a creature. That's animal cruelty if you're not doing your due diligence.
absolutely, man.
Yeah, we did that with our very first dog before we were fostering. We went and got a Lhasa, and we went to this pet shop, took the kids, and we were like, oh, look, this one loves us. Look, she's coming over and barking at us and all those things, not realizing like she was bossy. And she had all these things that eventually we ended up training out of her the more we learned. But it was one of those things where I was looking at now, if I were to walk into a room and see that dog, that would not be the dog that I would even gravitate to. I'd be like, which one seems like docile, seems self-content? I would look for other things.
You can spot it just like you can spot Sam's choice of women's red flags.
Yes, 100%.
Give us the plugs, man. Where should they go worship? Give us your social
what a
medias, your
great day.
band.
What a fantastic day.
I would say, as far as where you should worship, find any church that you can find. I'm a huge proponent. Calvary Chapel Philly is a wonderful church. If you are local to this and hearing
Oh
this,
man, I live nearby.
okay, Calvary Chapel Philly. If you want a church,
I know you actually. Wait. 2 years ago, you were already there, right? Preaching there.
No, so there I lead worship. That's my place of like home church worship. I am so that's. I don't know if you have been
I
there.
was
when
there
I'm
a few times 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's a great biblically sound church. So I definitely would say, by all means, if you're looking for a church that is teaching the Bible, definitely check that out. And there's some other great ones. What's that? The one that we went to, Sam?
The Crossing.
The Crossing in Washington's Crossing. Great.
Right on the bypass there?
Is that on the bypass?
I don't believe it's on the bypass. I could be totally mistaken. I mean, it is just the Crossing
Bypass in
Church
Silver
in
Lake
Washington
Road?
Crossing. That's all I can.
Okay.
do.
I went
could be
there
totally wrong.
I
Okay.
went there for one
can pull up the
men's
address.
breakfast with Sam, and I just had a really good experience there. So I haven't been to service there, but my oldest daughter takes my granddaughters there, and they love it. And I have been watching their services online, and it's been really great. It's that church has more of a, what I would say, spirit-filled persona, like the way that they're delivering the message, whereas Calvary Philly is more of I consider a teaching church. So they are literally teaching the Bible verse by verse, chapter by chapter. So, you might find a mixture of the two, because Calvary Philly, you can go on a Wednesday night and maybe you go and check out the Crossing on a weekend, and I think, then you're getting a mix of both. But definitely find the church that works for you. And as far as seeing the band, we're doing a thing called Mission Possible down at, what is that? I think it's Liberty, it's the brewing down in the city. There's Mission Possible is a cancer benefit. So that's happening in February for Octane. And then, like I said, I think it's May 10th, which is the night before Mother's Day. We will be at the Freedom Mortgage Pavilion doing the WMM barbecue, and I want to give a huge shout out to our friends from MMR, because they've been great and they're really excited, and they've been pushing us. We are back to Octane is writing and recording, and it looks there's a new album in the works, so there's some really exciting things happening there, and I'm super excited, to get out there again with these guys, because my guitar player Brian is just coming off the road. He's been out. He's the guitar player for Candlebox for the last 10 years as well. So he's coming off the road with them, and I'm just really excited to spend time with my brothers without any pressure, just making music for the love of making music.
That's incredible, man.
Yes,
Thank you so much for being on the show today, man.
Thank you guys for having me. It was a joy, man.
Guys, we appreciate each and every single one of you. We couldn't do it without you. If you want to submit any questions as far as topics you'd like us to cover, just shoot me an email at mitchellblack, BLAAK, @gmail.com. You can also submit a topic request form on our link tree. Shoot us a DM or comment on the socials. To stay up to date on all that we're up to or will be up to, give us a follow on Instagram at @thefence_podcasts, on YouTube at The Fence Podcast, and wherever you listen to your podcasts, simply at The Fence. We'll see you next time.
When Mitch's mom is coming on.
Thanks a lot, Sam.
You shit back.
That's not Mitch's mother's.